I came home earlier than planned. Seeing my husband standing on the porch, still holding a bouquet of flowers, I thought he was waiting for me. But just one breath later, a woman ran up to him, wrapped her arms around him, and kissed him like it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that exact moment, my heart understood what my mind had been trying so hard to deny. If you're listening, hit subscribe and drop the city you're tuning in from. And be honest with me. If you were me in that moment, what would you have done? Tuesday. I was supposed to still be in Charleston until tomorrow, coordinating the conference. I came home a day early because the keynote speaker canceled. I packed up, returned home, wanting to surprise my husband with a spontaneous romantic evening. I turned on to the narrow road leading into Belle Meade, the kind of neighborhood where crisp white colonials with wide porches get labeled dream living in real estate magazines. But as my car rolled down the hill, I hit the brakes. Literally. There, right in front of our house, on the porch steps I had picked the paint color for myself, stood my husband, Mason Hawthorne, CEO and producer of the indie country label Hawthorne Sound, my husband of 5 years, holding a massive bouquet of peonies and grinning like a lovesick boy on his first date. Peonies. My favorite flowers. The kind I'd begged him to remember for half a decade. The kind he once dismissed as overpriced weeds that die in 2 days. He was smiling like a giddy teenager, hairstyled, wearing the navy cashmere sweater I gave him for our last anniversary. Mason was never the romantic type. Throughout our relationship and marriage, the most romantic thing he'd done was order from the fancy Italian place instead of the cheap one around the corner. One year, he gave me a spa voucher located between a car repair shop and a fast food joint, saying, "It's practical. You need to relax." I still smiled. I still said thank you. So you can imagine the shock I felt seeing Mason not only holding a bouquet of flowers, but actually looking genuinely happy. I lowered the window a little, turned off the headlights, and parked halfway down the street behind a neighbor's SUV so no one would notice. From there, I had a perfect view of him. I was happy. I wanted to surprise him. But maybe the bigger surprise tonight was the one he had planned for me. I stayed still, watching the man I loved, a faint smile on my face. Then she appeared. Lila Monroe, 26, a rising actress who signed with Hawthorne Sound last spring. Long brown hair flying, a sundress, a smile that could sell out Ryman. She ran up the porch steps like she was filming a music video. He dropped the peonies on the railing, opened his arms like he was waiting for fate to deliver her. She practically leapt onto him, legs wrapped around his waist, and Mason, my husband, spun her around right there on the front porch of our home. I sat there, maybe 30 meters away, watching the man I had shared a bed with for 5 years lift another woman, hold her like the rest of the world had disappeared. Their laughter rang out so loud in the quiet afternoon, it drowned out the rustling leaves in the street. And the funniest part, literally, was realizing that everything on him bore my fingerprints, the Tag Heuer watch I'd carefully signed for, the flowers I adored, the porch tiles I personally chose, and he used all of it to stage a scene for someone else. They kissed, not a peck, not a casual goodbye. It was the kind of kiss you see in a movie trailer, long, wet, possessive, so much so that two elderly neighbors walking past paused, awkwardly turning away, pretending to check their phones. I always thought that if I ever caught my husband cheating, I'd cry, hands shaking, gasping for air. But I didn't, not a single tear. Just a freezing, clear sensation and a razor-sharp awareness. I was watching a live betrayal on a stage I had designed. I should have collapsed, rushed over to break them apart, or driven off in rage. I should have. But my life rarely aligned with should-haves. I didn't cry. I got so angry that I became clear. And more importantly, I started calculating. What Mason didn't know, or chose to forget, was that I wasn't just Mason's wife, or the woman who came up with concepts for his label's launch parties. I was Evelyn Hawthorne, 30 years old, a senior event planner for luxury weddings, charity galas, Release parties for Nashville's elite. I make a living staging moments, tweaking every second to land with the perfect emotional impact. I'm the one who commands the story in the room, not the woman standing outside the glass watching it unfold. I turn vague mood boards into dance floors, lighting cues, confetti bursts timed to the final beat of a song. I handle backstage chaos without guests suspecting a thing. And right then, as I watched my husband play the lead role on our porch, holding the young starlet from his label in his arms, I started planning the biggest, most ruthless event of my life, my grand debut of freedom, or more precisely, my divorce. Lila? Yes, now I recognized her clearly. The face I'd seen at the studio, on casting posters, the girl who brought cupcakes to the label staff, the one Mason introduced casually. I'd shaken her hand, smiled, been polite. That's who I am. Until tonight, let me be clear. My name is Evelyn Hawthorne. I'm 30. And up until about 3 minutes ago, I thought I had a decent enough marriage. We lived in a 2-story colonial in Belle Meade, the kind with white columns and a wide porch, the kind real estate listings call gorgeous. People would look at us and say, these two are living the sweet little American dream. I drove a Mercedes GLE, fully paid off, chosen by me, not a gift. We hosted dinners, entertained guests, sipped wine on the porch, listening to his latest demo tracks. On paper, everything looked beautiful. We didn't have kids. I channeled everything I had into my company, Everly Events, building it from a tiny name into the go-to firm that Nashville's rich booked a year in advance. At the very least, when everything else in my life felt shaky, that was mine. Looking back, I can pinpoint when things started to shift. About 2 years ago, Mason began coming home later, talking more about partner meetings, demo listening sessions, networking nights, grooming himself more, new shirts, new cologne, cleaner haircuts. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Noticing details is my job. But I convinced myself it was just part of him growing up, trying to embody the image of a CEOA, labeled it career evolution. Maybe even, he wants to look worthy of what he's built. Looking back, I gave him way too much benefit of the doubt. Mason thought I was naive, that I'd stay in the background forever. He forgot. I can read a script too. Mason didn't understand I wasn't the kind of wife who just sits at home, wondering what to make for dinner. I built my company from zero, carried chairs myself, hand-glued invitations, stood in the rain changing layouts at the bride's last-minute whims, still smiled, still thanked people for being so collaborative. I negotiated vendor deals that would eat Mason alive in a boardroom. I handled brides mid-meltdown that made hostile corporate takeovers look tame. In heels, with perfect lipstick and blush, I've extinguished emotional wildfires that would give trauma therapists pause, and Mason Hawthorne, my CEO husband, had no idea who he was messing with. I watched them break apart. Lila giggled, fixed her hair, retrieved the peonies from Mason's hand. They walked across the porch, past the door where I'd hung a new wreath every Christmas. They got close enough for me to smell her perfume, that expensive floral, holiday ad campaign scent. On her wrist dangled a little blue Tiffany bag, swinging like a prop. Before stepping inside, he pulled her close again, kissed her once more against the door. I lifted my phone, snapped a few photos, filmed a short clip. From outside, I looked like someone scrolling social media to kill time in her car. No one noticed. They entered my house like they'd just wrapped a beautiful scene, probably hearing cinematic music in their heads. Mason didn't glance around. Why would he? In his calendar, I was still busy with clients, not due back until tomorrow night. He thought he had at least 24 more hours to rehearse his new life before his boring wife returned. I stayed in the car about 5 more minutes after the porch light went out. Then I started laughing. Not the sobbing, desperate kind. The real kind, cold, clear laughter. Because I realized Mason had just made the classic cheater's mistake, underestimating his wife. He only saw me as the girl who plans parties, who makes sure his suits get dry cleaned on time, his bourbon cabinet stays full, who smiles through his clients' boring stories, who doesn't complain when he cancels dates. He didn't see the woman who just signed a six-figure deal with a billionaire, who has private numbers for multiple judges she's met at fundraisers, who has tracked every dollar in and out of this household while he creates. In the studio, I turned the engine on, reversed, drove a different way, toward my office in downtown Nashville, the place where I keep everything important: contracts, budgets, financial history. I walked in, turned on the lights, sat at my desk, opened my laptop, logged into our joint bank account, into the credit cards, every expense from the past 24 months. If Mason wanted to turn our marriage into a story, fine. I'd rewrite the ending, with numbers, with statements, with evidence so cold no lawyer could chuckle and wave it off. I opened our joint bank account first, and immediately, the transaction history lit up like neon warning signs. Small Venmo transfers: $120, $180, $95, each one small enough to go unnoticed. But when you scroll back over the last 18 months, it added up to more than $25,000. Then came a string of high-end restaurant bills. Cane Prime on a Wednesday night. The one Mason said the studio session ran long. Bourbon steak on a Friday, the night he claimed he was meeting clients from New York. Adele's on Valentine's Day, the night he said he had a Grammy submission deadline meeting, leaving me alone in the kitchen with a dinner I'd spent 2 hours preparing. And I actually felt guilty for feeling sad. Guilty for being upset he missed dinner. He said he had no choice, that he had to discuss budgets for hours. I believed him. Then hotel bills showed up. Not many. Maybe he didn't even know how to cheat discreetly. But enough. One night at the Hutton Hotel in March, Thompson, Nashville in June, then 56 Lofts in September. But the gut punch? Tiffany and Company, $4,873 on October 28th, charged directly to our shared credit card. Meanwhile, for our 5th anniversary, he gave me a cheap spa voucher in a strip mall next to a nail salon. I even posted a thank you on Facebook with a heart emoji. I was so naive. While he dropped nearly $5,000 at Tiffany for his mistress. I took screenshots of every transaction, every receipt, every suspicious date, each file named like a forensic accountant would. Everything sent to a secret email account, one Mason would never know existed. Then came iCloud. Mason's not tech-savvy. He uses the same password for everything. 5 years of marriage. I knew it too well. In under 20 seconds, I was in his iCloud, and a whole photo library opened. Hundreds of photos of Lila, at Pinewood Social, at Bluebird, walking along the Cumberland River at sunset, photos inside a log cabin in Gatlinburg. The exact weekend he said he was on a retreat with the production team. I clicked through each photo, my face unmoving. Then came the messages. And that's when I hit the jackpot. A chat thread with Lila. When are you going to tell Evelyn? It's been a year. A year. Turns out they'd been planning to leave me for a year. Baby, I know, but it has to be after the Grammy deadline. Don't want to ruin the party. Honey, that's perfect. Tonight at my place, the nightgown you got me, the new perfume, everything's ready. And Mason had even signed a lease on an apartment in the Gulch, one of the most expensive areas in Nashville. I let out a laugh. So I, the woman behind every gala, every campaign, every one of his successful events, was just a post-production step in his divorce timeline. I leaned back in my chair, cold laughter slipping out. The kind of man who thinks he's clever, but every move leaves a trace. Mason doesn't understand. I don't just plan events, I manage chaos, I coordinate crises, I identify root causes, I gather evidence. And I always finish the job. For the next 5 hours, I organized every photo, receipt, message into neatly labeled folders. Financials, hotels, messages, photos, affair timeline. I backed it up on 3 separate cloud platforms, printed 2 hard copies, one of which went into the office safe. Everything was flawless, like prepping for a Grammy night. Except this time, the one going on stage was Mason, as the defendant. After that, I searched for the top 10 divorce attorneys in Nashville. I selected 4 who specialized in high-asset cases, infidelity, and public scrutiny. I filled out intake forms for each firm, writing clearly, high-value assets, proof of infidelity, evidence of joint funds used for mistress urgent consultation needed. 10 p.m. My phone started buzzing nonstop. Mason called 5 times, sent 9 texts. Miss you, love you. How's the trip going? Let me know when you're back. Don't forget the company dinner Friday. Sleep well, wifey. He was probably lying next to Lila in that Gulch apartment while typing those words. I didn't reply. No need. Let him believe I was still in another city, busy, exhausted. Let him think everything was fine. Because tomorrow, I'd begin my round of legal consultations, and Mason Hawthorne still believed his life was running smoothly. He didn't know the new chapter had already begun, and the one holding the pen was me. Around midnight, I drove back to the house in Belmead. The house Mason had once generously said I could keep. If anything ever happened, I pulled into the driveway at 10:45 p.m., the entire place pitch dark. I sat in the car, quietly looking at the place I once called home, the white-columned colonial I had fallen in love with the moment we toured it, the flower beds along the walkway I had planted with my own hands, the front porch where we used to sit with wine, listening to demos from artists at the label, back when Mason wasn't too busy to spend a single quiet evening with his wife. I had built a life here, not a perfect one, but a good one, and he was willing to throw it all away for some 20-something actress. Fine. Let's see if it turns out to be as easy as he thinks. I drove to a hotel near my office. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. For about 3 seconds, my mind was blank, forgetting that my life had just been flipped inside out. Then it hit me again. Mason thought I was in Charleston. Mason was lying in my apartment with Lila. Mason had been planning to leave me for over a year. I made coffee, opened my email. 2 law offices had already replied. Both could see me this week. Valerie's firm had a Friday 3 p.m. slot open due to a cancellation. A sign, really. I booked it immediately. Valerie Blackwell, Friday afternoon. Then James Callahan, Thursday morning. I texted Mason. Sorry, I fell asleep early last night, long day. Conference is fine. Miss you too. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. His reply came almost instantly. No worries. As long as you're happy, I can't wait to see you. Love you. Love you! I almost laughed. That brand of male hypocrisy, where you text your wife and cuddle your mistress in the same bed all day Wednesday. I worked as usual. 3 online meetings with clients, discussing concepts, budgets, timelines. In between, I studied Tennessee divorce law, asset division, the concept of equitable distribution, how courts view dissipation of assets when one party spends marital funds to support an extramarital affair, and the legal consequences of using shared money to keep a mistress. Turns out, judges don't look kindly on that kind of behavior. Tennessee is a fault divorce state. Adultery is a fault. Using the joint account to pay for hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts for someone else isn't just a moral issue. It directly affects the asset split. Mason had ticked every wrong box. Using joint funds to cheat, leaving everything blatantly visible in our statements and accounts, texting his mistress plans like they were co-producing a new album by evening. I had compiled a 47-page dossier. Bank statements, screenshots, confirmation emails, restaurant and hotel receipts, Tiffany bills, chat timelines with Lila, selfies of Mason and her. Each item was sorted into categories, dated, annotated. I backed it up across 3 different cloud platforms, sent a copy to my secret email, then printed 2 hard copies. One left at the office, the other locked inside a personal safe Mason didn't even know existed. Thursday morning, I got up at 5 a.m. First legal consultation was at 9. I picked my outfit the way I'd style a gala host: navy pantsuit, cream silk blouse, pearl necklace. In the mirror, I saw a professional woman, financially successful, confident, not a soon-to-be-abandoned wife. James Callahan's office was in the Gulch. Ironically, the same neighborhood where Mason rented his secret apartment, The building was glass and chrome, everything screaming, "Billed by the quarter hour." James looked to be in his 50s, sharp suit, firm handshake, the kind of smile that tells you every minute costs money. "Mrs. Hawthorne, I understand you're dealing with something fairly urgent," he said. "Urgent's one word for it," I replied, sliding the 47-page file across the table. His eyebrows rose as he flipped through it, and then climbed higher when he hit the Tiffany bill, his mouth twitching slightly. "This is comprehensive. What do you do for a living?" "Events. Planning's what I do." "I can tell," he said. In 23 years of practice, he'd rarely seen a client walk in this prepared on day one. "That's good for you, not so much for your husband." I told him everything: the scene on the porch, the bouquet, the kiss, the Venmo transfers, the apartment in the Gulch, the chat logs with Lila. "And your husband doesn't know you've discovered all this?" In his mind, "I'm in Charleston shooting wedding photos until tomorrow afternoon." "Perfect, let's keep it that way." James explained that Tennessee divides assets equitably, not necessarily 50-50. And when one party uses marital assets to fund infidelity, the court weighs that heavily. He used joint money on hotels, dinners, gifts for his mistress. That's dissipation of assets. "What does that mean for me?" I asked. "It means you have a strong chance of receiving more than 50% of the total assets. And we can absolutely petition for him to reimburse the money he spent on Lila." He asked about income. I told him last year, Everly Events brought in roughly $250,000 in profit. Mason, as CEO and producer, made about $550,000, not including bonuses and dividends. "There's a gap, but not a dependency gap. That's great for you. The story we'll tell in court won't be abandoned dependent wife, but successful woman, betrayed yet standing strong." Judges don't like powerful men who misuse their wife's trust. We discussed strategy, timeline, possible mediation, the likelihood of going to trial. James's conclusion was simple. With the evidence I had, most people like Mason would choose to settle, rather than risk having their love affair, finances, and betrayal turned into a public court record for reporters, musicians, and investors to dig through. By 2 p.m., I had one last stop: the bank. I pulled into Pinnacle Bank on West End, where my husband and I had done all our banking over the past 5 years. Stacy, the familiar face who once helped us when we bought our house, greeted me with a warm smile. "Hi, Mrs. Hawthorne. What can I help you with today?" I took a quiet breath. I need to fully understand the structure of our joint accounts. I've been a little worried about financial security lately. Over the next 45 minutes, I learned everything: the balance in each account, daily withdrawal limits, and, most unsettling of all, that one party could drain a joint account with virtually no barriers. If my husband wanted to withdraw all the money tomorrow, could anything stop him? Stacy gave me a soft look and gently shook her head. "Not on a standard joint account, no. But if you'd like to protect your share, you can absolutely open an individual account and move your portion into that." She paused, her eyes carrying that look of someone who's seen too many marriages unravel. Not judgmental, just understanding. "Your financial safety matters, Mrs. Hawthorne. You have every right to protect your assets." I didn't move any funds. Doing so now would raise red flags, and Mason would notice. But I remembered every detail. I opened a new business account for Everly Events. Under my name only, no ties to Mason. No one else knew about it, and most importantly, it was entirely out of his line of sight. By 3:45, according to the fake schedule I'd carefully sent Mason, my flight from Charleston would be landing at 4:30. At 4:55, I texted him, "Just landed, grabbing my bags, heading home." His response popped up immediately. "Great, I'll be home around 6. Want me to pick up dinner?" "Yes, please, I'm exhausted." "Chinese from your favorite place?" "Perfect." Our messages read like textbook ideal married couple. If you ignored the fact that he was living a double life, I drove home, stepping into the role of wife returning from a work trip, arriving at 5:45, just enough buffer to make it believable. The house was quiet, the air frozen still. I walked in, looked around. Everything was exactly the same, but I wasn't. I wondered, when was the last time Mason touched me with any real tenderness? 6 months ago? 8? I used to think it was the stress, his overloaded production schedule. But apparently, his needs were still being met. Just not by me, and not in this house. I opened my phone and checked my calendar. Tomorrow, Friday, 3 p.m., I'd be meeting with Valerie Blackwell. The company gala was set for the 15th. And as for Mason's little amicable post-Grammy divorce plan, sorry, but I wasn't going to play the loyal assistant who plans the party and then sits back waiting for a divorce filing as some warped 5-year anniversary gift. I had news for Mason Hawthorne. I wasn't waiting until the end of the month. At exactly 6 p.m., Mason's car pulled into the drive. I inhaled deeply, relaxed my shoulders, and put on my usual smile. He walked in with 2 bags of food, jacket slightly wrinkled, smile tired, but still soft, the kind of Mason strangers always mistook for a good man. I let him kiss my cheek, the last piece left of our marriage, but the faint floral note clinging to his shirt betrayed him. "How was the conference?" he asked. "Fine, tiring, but good." We ate Chinese takeout and chatted like everything was normal. Mason talked about a difficult recording session with a new artist at the label. I fabricated a few networking stories to play along. "Besides that, how's work been?" I asked. "Same old. Some cleanup sessions, a few last-minute meetings." He took a sip of water, then added, "Oh, by the way, next Thursday afternoon, there's a little celebration for the company. You'll come, right?" I smiled, looked up, and said, "Of course. I'll be there." Friday afternoon, exactly 3 p.m., I stepped into Valerie Blackwell's office on the top floor of a glass tower in the heart of downtown. The kind of place where just looking through the thick windows made you feel the hourly rate. Valerie Blackwell was in her 50s, dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit, silver bob cut, razor sharp, and eyes cold enough to slice through any excuse she didn't look up, just flipped quickly through the thick folder of documents I had prepared. "Mrs. Hawthorne, have a seat. This file is fascinating," she said, eyes still scanning the statements, receipts, screenshots. I sat down and silently watched her work, hands flipping pages swiftly, precisely, her eyes sweeping through the numbers like a scanner. Finally, Valerie looked up and gave a small smirk. "Your husband is an idiot. Not just your average idiot. Specifically, in the cheating department, I've seen construction workers cover their tracks better than him." She tapped her pen lightly on the file. "Did he accidentally enroll in a course called How to Have an Affair as Publicly as Possible?" Despite everything falling apart, I laughed. "He's great at music, spotting talent. Everything else, not so much." Valerie leaned back in her chair. "All right, here's the deal. You've got 3 options. Option 1. We file right now. We use this mountain of evidence to pressure him into a quick, clean, quiet settlement. You walk away from this marriage with more than your fair share and reimbursement for everything he spent on his mistress. It's the tidy, fast, less painful route." I nodded, then asked, "What's the second?" "The long game," Valerie said. "We keep watching, gather more, wait for the most professionally sensitive moment in his career, then strike. Much more satisfying, possibly even more lucrative." I swallowed hard, still feeling like that wasn't quite enough. "And option 3? Valerie gave a predatory smile. "Public education. We file, reject any offer of a quiet settlement, take this to court, and turn every hotel receipt, every message, every dollar he spent on Lila into a public record. Open hearing. Press allowed. Colleagues able to read it. The industry buzzing. His career gets a scar it never recovers from." I exhaled. "Sounds expensive." "It is," she nodded, "but incredibly effective if your primary goal is making sure he never forgets the cost of betraying you." Valerie paused and looked me in the eye. But what I really need to know is, what do you want? Revenge is fun, sure, but it's not always strategic. What do you want? I sat silently for a moment, like I was facing myself in a mirror. I want Mason to hurt. I want him to lose what he values. I want him to understand consequence. But more than that, I want to win. I want to walk away financially strong, life ready for a new chapter, and I want him to understand that the biggest mistake of his life was underestimating me. I looked straight at Valerie. I want to file after a key milestone, right when he thinks he's on top of the world. Valerie's smile lit up like stage lights. Perfect that, I can do. Does your husband have any major upcoming career events? I scanned Mason's schedule in my mind. August 15th, 18th. There's a gala, all major sponsors, board members, local press, and company staff will be there. August 31st, another major event. Valerie actually laughed. Flawless. And you are? The lead planner. My company's handling the entire gala. Valerie nearly clapped. Oh my God. This is a gift from the heavens. You'll be standing there, fully professional, while your husband accepts an award and thanks his amazing wife. And you'll already know his world is about to fall apart, Mrs. Hawthorne. This is perfect. We spent another 90 minutes mapping out every next step. Valerie was crystal clear. We'll file between those two events, close enough that he won't have time to move any assets, but far enough that your professional image at the gala won't be compromised. With this level of evidence, most attorneys will advise their clients to settle immediately. The alternative is a public trial. His lawyer will have to explain that, which means he'll understand that fighting you is career suicide. I asked. And if he refuses to settle? Then we drag him into court and tear him apart in front of the world, Valerie said with a shrug, her tone calm, like she was forecasting weather. But from my experience, men like your husband, terrified of reputational damage, he'll take the deal and sign quickly. When I asked about the financials, Valerie pulled out a calculator while I gave her the full figures. Home value, retirement accounts, savings, investments. Marital estate's around $2.6 million, she concluded. Standard 50-50 gives you 1.3. But given that he used joint funds to support his mistress, that's dissipation, plus the adultery factor, I'll push for 60-40. And we demand full reimbursement for what he spent on Lila, over $25,000. All of it from his share. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something between bitterness and grim amusement. When do we start? Today, Valerie said. My paralegal will prep the initial paperwork. You'll provide additional financial details, sign off. Then go back to your regular life. Plan the gala, smile at your husband, play the perfect wife for exactly one more week. I left Valerie's office at 4:45 feeling lighter. Like I'd set down a massive stone exactly where it belonged. I had a plan, someone in my corner, and a clear strategy. All that was left was surviving a week of pretending. When I got home, the surprise was Mason already in the kitchen. A rarity on a Friday night. The smell of something baking filled the air. You're cooking? I asked, genuinely surprised. Making that lemon chicken you love. You've been so busy lately, figured you could use a proper dinner. He was even wearing an apron. I suddenly wondered, when did we even get an apron? That sudden sweetness triggered every alarm bell in my head. Mason hadn't cooked a proper meal in 3 years. What's the occasion? I asked casually. He shook his head. No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice for my wife. We had dinner, and annoyingly, it was actually delicious. He chatted excitedly about the party, the guest list, the award he was about to receive. His eyes lit up. I couldn't have gotten this far without you, he said, squeezing my hand. You've always been the one behind the scenes, holding everything together. I don't say it enough, but I appreciate you so much. I wanted to throw my wine in his face, scream that I knew every hotel receipt, every message with Lila. But I didn't. I gently squeezed his hand and gave the softest smile I could manage. That's what marriage is, right? Supporting each other. The next week was a crash course in emotional compartmentalization. By day, I was Evelyn Hawthorne, the elite event planner, fine-tuning every last detail of the hospital gala, choosing florals, managing lighting cues, adjusting the minute-by-minute run of show by night. I was a different Evelyn, the woman about to divorce her husband, meeting with Valerie's paralegal, signing forms, submitting statements, checking numbers, finalizing a strategy to dismantle Mason the admirable CEO. On paper, Mason continued living his double life with stunning smoothness. He was sweeter than usual, suddenly bringing home flowers, asking me to catch a movie over the weekend. I went with him, had dinner, shared popcorn, laughed at the right moments, all the while thinking, he's probably texting Lila during the mid-movie bathroom break. By the weekend, his family came over for dinner. I was back in the kitchen, prepping stuffing, baking 3 types of pie, setting the table, chatting with everyone like I hadn't just seen the truth unravel on my own front porch. My mother-in-law gently prodded again. You two should start thinking about having a baby, dear. It's been 5 years. Mason slipped his arm around me and laughed. We're happy as we are, Mom. Plus, Evelyn's career is really taking off, right, babe? I nodded, polite smile firmly in place, while inside, there was only cold emptiness. As August 15th approached, I was running on caffeine, checklists, and pure spite. The closer the event came, the more flawless everything became. And I knew he was counting down to the moment he'd step on stage, accept his award, thank the incredible wife behind the scenes, and then, maybe, hand me divorce papers with some line about growing apart or my refusal to start a family. But before that could happen, someone would knock on our door at exactly 6 p.m. and hand him a thick envelope, ruining his entire plan. The night of August 15th, the Grand Meridian Hall looked so perfect it felt almost fake. The lighting was adjusted to the exact warmth that made everyone's skin glow in photos. The flowers were arranged in layers and heights precisely matching the palette I had reviewed again and again. Catering ran so smoothly, not a single canapé tray was late. 250 guests in black tie attire, holding expensive wine glasses, chatting beneath the string quartet. Everyone was enjoying a flawless evening, and I was the one behind it. I wore a navy evening gown that hugged just right, the kind of dress that a few years ago I would have asked Mason if it was too much. Tonight, he looked at me from across the room, walked over, placed his hand on my waist, and simply said, "You look beautiful," his voice sounding so sincere that if I didn't know the truth, I might have been moved. One by one, the young singers, his staff, the company's guests, took the stage and spoke glowing words about Mason, about his vision, his dedication, about the man who brought Nashville's indie country music to a new map, all tossing in a light joke about his incredible wife behind the scenes. When Mason stepped onto the stage at 8 p.m. to give a speech on excellence, loyalty, commitment, and integrity, the entire room rose to applaud. He held the mic, smiling humbly, saying all the scripted lines about the team, the artists, the opportunity. And like clockwork, he turned toward the front row where I sat with the planning committee and said loudly, "I couldn't have done this without my amazing wife, Evelyn." Dozens of eyes turned to me. A few of his colleagues winked, mouthing, "He's a lucky guy." I smiled, nodded, clapped like a woman basking in the glow of being honored, while glancing toward Lila's spot and seeing the jealousy in her eyes, the resentment, as if I were the obstacle blocking her golden path. After the speech, the music shifted into soft jazz. Mason held out his hand. "Dance with me?" I let him lead me onto the floor. We swayed to the rhythm, and he leaned in. "Thank you, tonight's. Perfect. None of this could have happened without you." I smiled. "It's my job." He squeezed my hand tighter. "Not just the event, our life. You keep everything running." I heard the words "our life," and saw only the image of him spinning Layla on our front porch the night before I came home. The lease for the apartment in the Gulch, the Venmo payments, the nearly $5,000 Tiffany bill, and the string of messages to Lila mapping out the cleanest way to leave me. Maybe it was just the kind of promises cheaters make to their mistresses, but I no longer cared. I still let him lead me under the warm lights, still smiled at guests, still posed for photos with the committee, still delivered the gala down to the last detail like I hadn't planned to dismantle the entire life he was talking about. Only in my head. Everything was already sealed with a bold red line, and the date, August 16th, 6 p.m., was already highlighted in crimson August 16th. Nashville was fittingly gray for my final act. Cloudy skies, no rain, cool and damp. The kind of weather that made people want to stay home, cook something decent, and pretend everything was okay for one more night. That morning, I responded to a few client emails, soaked in the praise for the flawless gala. Each time I saw that word, I felt hopeful. They'd become future clients. Around noon, I texted Mason, "Come home early tonight. I opened that Pinot Noir you bought last time." He replied almost instantly, "I'll try to be home before 6. "That sounds amazing. You're always so thoughtful." I stared at the word thoughtful and felt only a thin layer of ice settle deeper in my chest. At 5:30 p.m., I tidied the living room, placed 2 wine glasses on the table, wore a soft sweater and jeans. Not a gown, no waterproof mascara, just the version of me who's the wife waiting at home for her husband after work. At 5:55, I heard the familiar car pull into the driveway. My heart skipped a beat, but my hands calmly adjusted the glasses to line up perfectly. Mason walked in, carrying takeout and a bottle of Pinot Noir. "I got the kind you like. Want me to open it now or wait?" I turned and smiled. "Let it breathe. We've got all night." He set the bottle down, hadn't even taken off his coat yet when, right at 6 p.m., the doorbell rang, 3 sharp knocks. Mason frowned. "Who would that be at this hour? Were you expecting someone?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Could you get the door?" He walked over, unlocked it, and I stood in the living room, watching, already picturing each line that was about to happen. The man in a suit stood on the porch, holding a thick manila envelope. "Mr. Mason Hawthorne?" "Yes, that's me," Mason replied, his voice uncertain. "You've been served," the man said, handing over the envelope before turning and walking off like he'd just delivered an online package. Mason froze at the door for a few seconds, then slowly closed it, staring at the envelope like it might explode. "Evelyn, what is this?" he asked, voice unsteady. I leaned back on the sofa, legs crossed, voice calm. "Open it. You'll find out." His hands trembled as he tore it open. I watched the face I knew so well cycle through the stages, confusion, then panic, then dread, as his eyes locked onto the words, "petition for divorce," and the clearly underlined cause. Adultery. "Evelyn, I don't understand. What is this?" he stammered. "Really?" I stood, arms folded. "Let me help you understand. The night before I came home, you were on our porch with Lila, spinning her around like a movie scene, then walked into my apartment. The apartment in the Gulch you signed a lease for. Over $25,000 in restaurants, hotels, perfume, a nearly $5,000 Tiffany bill. Dozens of messages with Lila about how to leave me neatly. Shall I go on? The color drained from his face like someone had unplugged his blood. I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you have a very convincing script," I cut him off. "Just like the one you've rehearsed to yourself for the past year." His mouth opened, then shut, eyes scanning for footing. How long have you?" "I saw it," I said, tone flat. "I filmed it, downloaded the photos and messages from your iCloud, collected every receipt you charged to our joint account, every ticket, every dinner, every hotel night. 2 years of affairs, the secret apartment, the plan to dump me after I finished organizing your spotlight moments. All of it's in the file my attorney now holds." He sank onto the sofa, still gripping the papers. Evelyn, please, let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said. And worse, you planned to keep going. Let me run the gala, send the invites, stand behind you smiling. Then you'd sit me down and gently hand over the divorce. What was I to you? A final task to check off? He was silent, and that silence was the clearest answer I could ever get. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly, like reading a checklist. Here's what's going to happen. You'll take those papers to your lawyer. You'll look at the evidence I've compiled, complete and undeniable. You'll understand that if you fight me, everything will become public record. The affair, the spending, the apartment, the bills. Then you'll agree to my terms. He looked up, voice cracking. What? What terms? A 60-40 asset, split in my favor, full reimbursement, for every dollar you spent on Lila. Out of your share. No arguments, no victim act, no delays, I said. You sign, we separate, and move on. Mason shook his head. 60-40? Evelyn, that's not fair. I laughed. Fair? Was it fair when you used our money for hotels, rings, perfume, dates with your mistress? Was it fair when I answered client emails, fixed timelines, planned your gala while you were creating in the gulch with Lila? He had nothing to say. I continued, my voice colder. Judges don't like men who use marital funds to bankroll affairs. So 60-40 is me being generous. If we go to trial, I'll push for 70-30 and I'll probably get it. And you'll lose more than just money. He swallowed hard, hands shaking. I still love you, Evelyn. This was just… I didn't mean to divorce? Then maybe 2 years ago, you should have been a grown man, honored boundaries, not cheated, not lied, not made me your backstage manager while you auditioned replacements, I said, not a tremor in my voice. Apologize if you want, but I don't care. I only care that you take responsibility. He bowed his head, defeated. I looked at him, feeling no thrill, just the certainty that I had done the right thing. You need to move out, I said. Tonight. Go upstairs, grab your essentials, and head to Lila's. I'm sure she'll be happy to share her space. Evelyn, please, don't make me leave tonight. You had 2 years to tell the truth. 2 years to change, to fight for this marriage. You chose lies. So now you choose the suitcase. It's that simple. The rest, the lawyers will handle and pray I don't change my mind about keeping things private. Mason stood, looking 10 years older in a matter of minutes. He walked upstairs. When he came down with a rolling suitcase, he paused at the door. No matter what, I'm sorry. You deserve better. I never stopped loving you. You're right, I said, opening the door. I do deserve better. Now go. The door shut behind him, and I stood alone in the quiet house. I sat down on the sofa, waiting to see if some wave of emotion would hit. Pain, regret, emptiness. But what I felt instead was a strange relief, like someone had finally lifted a soaking wet coat off my shoulders. My phone buzzed. A message from Valerie Blackwell. Process server confirmed delivery. Everything okay over there? I typed back. Better than I expected, he's gone. Consider it done. A few seconds later, Valerie replied, Not done. Just the beginning of the final act. His lawyer will contact us within 48 hours. Get ready to negotiate. I looked at the screen, smiled faintly. I'm ready, I typed, then set the phone down on the table, poured a glass of wine, bitter and flat. The weeks that followed moved in a strange rhythm. No more explosive climaxes, just one legal meeting after another, loops of emails, rounds of negotiation inside closed-door conference rooms that smelled of paper and stale coffee. At night, when the city lit up, I made sure to be alone in the house that now felt oddly larger. No in-laws, no model daughter-in-law expectations. Just me, a steaming box of Chinese takeout on the coffee table, rom-coms playing on the screen like a cheap but effective form of comfort, and some part of me relearning how to be alone without feeling lonely. On weekend nights, the house remained silent. I wasn't busy preparing dinners for Mason's family, wasn't fielding passive-aggressive comments about children and duty. I ate instant noodles, curled under a blanket, watched old movies, and realized that not having to play the perfect wife was a gift in itself. By August 27th, both sides finally sat across from each other in a boardroom with a long wooden table. Mason sat on the other end, avoiding eye contact, letting his lawyer propose a 55-45 split and a written promise to repay the $25,000 he had spent on Lila over 2 years. Valerie glanced at me for approval, and I nodded. Agreed. But with one non-negotiable line, I considered my final boundary. The agreement had to clearly state that he admitted to the affair and to using marital funds to sustain it. I kept the house, would refinance to buy out his equity, kept the Mercedes I had paid for mostly myself, and the retirement and investment accounts would be divided per our finalized percentages. It was all wrapped into dry lines of legal text, numbers, and clauses, but to me, each signature he placed was a moment he was forced to confront the truth of what he'd done. On September 15th, we signed the final agreement in a short morning session, and on October 5th, the court officially approved the divorce. 5 years of marriage closed with a single blue signature on a piece of paper I neatly folded, placed in its own folder, and shelved like a book I'd finished reading. Lila sent me a long message accusing me of being greedy, claiming Mason deserved happiness, dramatic sentences flashing on the screen. I stared for a second, then swiped left and hit delete, like clearing out trash from a hard drive. No reply, no defense, because I no longer owed anyone a role in the story they'd scripted for themselves. A year after that afternoon, I stood on the porch, watching my husband hold another woman outside our home. I sat on that same porch, a mug of hot tea in hand, looking at the Elia shrubs I had once planted, and I realized I didn't feel grateful for the affair. I didn't need to be so saintly as to thank a wound for making me stronger. What I was grateful for was the version of myself I had become through it all. The woman who didn't scream, didn't ruin the gala, but quietly collected every piece of evidence. The woman who sat alone in the dark reading divorce law, learning how to talk to attorneys, choosing the right strategy to reclaim what was hers. The woman who remained calm enough to tell him to pack and leave without needing the world to know. Now I live alone in a house that legally bears my name, walking the halls without feeling like a guest in someone else's life. Everly Events is thriving more than ever. I've hired more staff. The calendar is booked 18 months out, and, oddly enough, clients have started coming to me not just for weddings, but for divorce parties, small gatherings where women raise their glasses to celebrate leaving relationships that no longer deserved them. Quiet and fierce rebirths in the form of toasts and candlelight. Occasionally, I go on dates. Never in a rush, never with the pressure of finding my next great love, just slowly learning to sit across from someone new, talk about work, about interests, without hiding the old scars, because I know now they're part of what shaped me into the woman I am. When I stand in the living room and glance out the window, the very spot where I first witnessed his betrayal, I sometimes smile. Mason once thought he was upgrading by choosing Lila, someone newer, younger, more eager. But what he really discarded wasn't just a wife. It was the woman who made his whole life run smoothly. The calendar, the galas, the image of the successful man he loved to flaunt. And for me, that moment I saw him with someone else on our doorstep wasn't the end of a fairy tale. It was just the soft click of a book closing after its final chapter. From that day on, every morning I opened my eyes. I started writing a new one for myself, not with a prince, not with promises of forever, but with a woman who learned to stand on her own feet. And maybe that's the most peaceful kind of happy ending. The best ending isn't keeping a marriage, it's walking away from it with your dignity intact and a life that truly belongs to you.